name right. So from a classroom teacher to entrepreneur, Dupé forged her own professional path by transferring her teaching expertise to becoming a keynote speaker. For 2 decades, she has educated, empowered, and enriched people from all walks of life through her teachings, speeches, and online content. Dupe is now recognized as one of the top motivational influencers and a leading authority for curriculum and online course development. However, her success came from misfortune, but I'm sure she'll go ahead and share her story when we get into it. And I know she just came back from being with Les Brown and a whole host of motivational speakers. So come on up here, Dupé. Let's welcome her.
Hey, you guys.
Hello.
So, International Women's Day. I commend every one of you guys for being here today. It's a Friday night. We can be doing many things, right? But kudos to you for being here and really taking your personal development and growth seriously. So, pats on the back. So, turn to the women to your left and tell them, you are awesome.
You're awesome. You're awesome.
And turn to the woman to your right and say, you are awesome.
You're awesome.
Awesome, ladies. Awesome, awesome. I'm going to start with a quote. Your biggest problem today can become the greatest gift you will receive. Your biggest problem today can become the greatest gift that you will receive. I once heard that quote when I was listening to a personal development seminar on YouTube. And from that moment on, my entire life changed in many ways that I could have ever imagined. Because something up here shifted. Yes? Like I had a new way of thinking. So how many of you guys have ever felt that what you're currently going through, meaning your adversity, is preventing you from reaching your full potential? Whether it be a health problem, an unhealthy relationship, right? Maybe you're unhappy in your job, or just life in general, yes? Many of us has, right? So what I want you guys to understand that change can happen, but only if you are willing to make a choice. Meaning that you are willing to make a decision to take a chance on yourself because you understand that you are worthy of achieving everything that your heart desires. You guys get what I'm saying? Yes. Okay, so who's ready to take a chance on themselves today? Show of hands. Okay. So if you're ready and willing today to take a chance on yourself, here's the first step that you must take. Now I want you guys to understand, I'm a teacher, so you guys are probably going to be taking notes, okay? So there's some notepads in front of you guys and a pen. But if you're ready and willing today to take a chance on yourself, the first step that you must take is you must learn to embrace challenges as they come so that you can learn to thrive in adverse conditions and find greater fulfillment in life while experiencing change. Now, I know this is not a new concept. There's a man by the name of Herodotus. He's a Greek historian, and he once said, adversity has the effect of drawing out strength and qualities of a man that would have lain dormant in his absence. Isn't that profound? So what exactly does that mean? Well, whether you like it or not, adversity is alive in your daily experiences. And it can strike when you least expect it to. Right. And what I've learned from my own experience is that it's not about how to overcome adversity, because we always talk about how to overcome. It's about how to embrace adversity so that you can then open yourselves to possibilities and begin to build character along with other values that really matter to you. But of course, when adversity occurs, it is only natural, it is human nature that we want to dwell in self-pity, yes? Yes. But if you do, you fail to recognize all the opportunities that were laid in your path for your advancement. You see, every struggle or challenge or difficulty that you can successfully confront in your life will only serve to strengthen your confidence and also your ability to tackle future obstacles. See, when we start to learn how to respond positively and objectively to challenges, we then place ourselves in position to begin to experience change in multiple degrees, such as maybe tapping into your own willpower and your creativity, right? But we all want to succeed in life. Who wants to succeed in life? We all want to succeed, right? But in order to succeed, there are certain mindsets that we must have. And these mindsets are really the attitudes and core beliefs that create the essence of who you truly are and how you approach life. So in terms of your own mindset, you can be two things. Number one, you can be a victim or you can be a victor. It's your choice. You can't be both. See, a victim, we've all seen victims before, right? They walk around, they blame everyone and everything for their mistakes, but a victor takes responsibility for them. Growing up as a child, my parents, they will always tell me something over and over and over again. And that was, Dupé, you're lucky. You're lucky, you're lucky, you're lucky. And because of that, I think that I automatically assumed that I would not have to endure some of the hardships that I witnessed my friends dealing with, until a sudden medical condition humbled me at the age of 26. So to make a long story short, about 10 years ago, I came very close to dying due to a life-threatening condition at that time. And that adversity drew out so much strength and qualities in me that I never knew existed in me. And though I was blessed to have survived that situation, I didn't even appreciate my entire process until much later on, when I started to see myself as a much stronger and self-aware individual. I want you guys to understand that sometimes in life, we have to go through challenging circumstances. You understand what I'm saying? In order for us to become the person that we're meant to be. This is why I said earlier, this is why we must learn to embrace the challenges. That way, when they hit us, we can thrive in adverse conditions and start to find greater fulfillment in life while experiencing change. Now, what I can say now is this, and I honestly mean that if I had the chance to go back in time, like if a genie came in front of me right now and was like, you got one wish, we can go back in time and change your situation, I wouldn't. Because I know that if I had not experienced that level of pain and discomfort, I would not be the woman standing in front of you today. Because I started to, number one, I started to look at life differently. Number two, I started to appreciate my family and those closest to me. But most importantly, I started to have faith in God and what He had planned for my life. See, it was never about the pain for me. People get so fixated on, 39 tumors removed from my body. It's not about the pain. What I took out of my experience was the challenge to actually have to fight through something that was trying to hold me back from reaching my purpose. And that challenge to overcome my illness is what saved my life. Because in turn, I had to become a different person in the process. So what problems are you guys dealing with today that is keeping you from achieving your greatest gift? That is the question I want you to answer by the end of my talk. And in the next 25 minutes, I'm going to be sharing little bits of my story. But more importantly, I'm going to be giving you guys 7 truths that I hope you guys write down. 7 truths that really shifted the direction of my life and can do the same for you so that you can start to learn how to embrace your challenges and live a much more fulfilled life. Yes? And the reason why I know you can do it is because I did it, and we're the same. We're no different. So if I can do it, you can do it. You guys with me?
Yeah.
All right, so truth number 1. Repeat after me. Life requires sacrifice.
Life requires sacrifice.
Oh, we're going to have to do better than that. Truth number 1. Life requires sacrifice.
Life requires sacrifice.
There you go. Who or what comes to your mind when you think of the word sacrifice? Shout it out loud. Who comes to your mind when you think of the word sacrifice? Parents. Who else? Family. Yes. When I think of the word sacrifice, I automatically think of my parents. My dad came to the United States in 1964. He's an immigrant from Nigeria. My mom came in 1979. And they've been married now for almost 40 years. Right? Raise your hand if you were raised by immigrant parents. Okay, so you two understand my pain. Only 2 of you guys. And I say that jokingly, but no, seriously. My life in so many ways was much different than the lives of my friends who had American-born parents. Because in my case, the expectation to succeed was a lot higher due to the sacrifices my parents made so that my siblings and I can live the American dream, right? What sacrifices have you made in order to achieve the thing that you want most? Dave Ramsey said it best. He said, the most important decisions about our goals are not what we are willing to do to achieve them, but what we are willing to give up. Does that make sense? It's because everything in life requires sacrifice. So I'm going to be giving you guys nuggets within all of these truths that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. So if you want to achieve anything in life, here's the first 3 questions I want you to ask yourself. Number 1, what do I want? I know it sounds so simple. What do I want? What are you passionate about? What makes you tick? What makes you happy? You have to gain clarity on what it is that you want in life. And once you understand what you want, the second question that you must ask yourself is, what am I willing to sacrifice in order to get what I want? Because everything in life will require sacrifice. And I had to realize this a few years ago. You will always know that you're living fully within your purpose because you're willing to sacrifice things most people are not. That's when you know that you're aligned with your purpose. And the third question you're going to ask yourself is, what are my daily action steps? Okay? So you understand what it is that you want. You understand what you're willing to sacrifice. Now what do I have to do each and every day to reach my goals? And I want you guys to write these down. There was actually a study done by the Dominican University of California, and the study showed that those who wrote down their goals were 42% more likely to achieve them. 42%. So raise your hand if you actually write down your goals. This scares me each time. Okay, good. More. Good. Good, ladies. Good, good, good. All right? What do I want? What am I willing to sacrifice? And what are my daily action steps? Okay? Moving on to truth number 2. Life is about recognizing and accepting your limitations. Now, I don't want you to think about this in a bad way, right? Like, we can't be naive. We all have limitations. I know the whole positive mindset and I'm, limitless. I get all that, right? But let's be realistic, okay? We all have limitations. We can't be great at everything, right? So this is where you deploy self-awareness and you understand your strengths, okay? You're putting all your energy towards your strengths. But I get it. We go through life and there's people that made us feel like we weren't good enough. Raise your hand if someone made you feel like you weren't good enough. We've all experienced that before. When I was in elementary school, my teachers, some of them, would compare me to my older sister Lola, where you're apart. And, sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but my sister was like the perfect child, straight A student, like book nerd, and here I am, the wild child, DF, always talking in class, right? So naturally, when I would move on to the next grade, my teachers would say, why can't you be more like your sister? And that kind of hurt. And luckily for me, my sister ended up being placed in GATE in 5th grade, so I never had her teachers again, so that was good. But I got labeled as an at-risk student. The irony of this whole situation is that 16 years later, I become a what? Teacher. And the one thing that I used to get in trouble for in class, talking, is not what I do for a living. So in that respect, some of those teachers were wrong about me, but there's a valuable lesson that I learned from that. And here are your next nuggets. Nugget number 1 within truth number 2. Never allow labels and titles to define who you are. See, some of you are allowing your past mistakes and the titles that people placed on you to hold you back from reaching your full potential. Your past does not define you. It actually prepares you for your future. Yes? Okay? And the second nugget is the only person who can tell you who you can or cannot become is yourself. We allow other people to place their opinions onto us. It's like we're a bird and we allow them just to clip our wings, clip, and then all of a sudden we can't fly. We can't reach our full potential because we're listening to what other people want for us. Listen, your purpose is meant for your understanding and God's understanding only. And as I started to go within my career, I realized it's best to stop telling everybody what you're doing, how you're doing it, and when you're doing it. And just do it. And trust me, they will come around once they see you popping and shining. And you know how that goes, right? I knew you could do it. Sure you did, right? That's what it always is. So that is what I want to end with truth number 2, you guys. And we're going to be moving on to truth number 3, which is life is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it. Life is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it. See, life will always find a way of testing your character. It will. And your character will be determined by the choices of your actions. I made a poor choice in 3rd grade. I decided, you guys, I was a bad kid. Let me tell you guys. These are just a little bit of stories. I decided to forge all my progress reports, my mom's signature on all my progress reports. Every single one of them. I don't know what I was thinking, but when my mom came home from that parent-teacher conference in tears, it wasn't good. And just to see the hurt, like she didn't even yell at me, she was hurt. And I wish I could stand in front of you guys today and say at that moment I started to morph into the person that God wanted me to be. No, I was a hot mess for at least another 9 years, okay? But when I got older, I realized something important. Disappointment is necessary in order to achieve the greatest amount of success. And your success will be measured by how you handle disappointments along the way, yes? So the next time that your character is being tested, here's your next nuggets. Number 1, think before you act by considering the consequences. Okay? So think before you act by considering the consequences. Because everything that we do in life will affect either you, those closest to you, or even people you don't know. And some of you may be thinking, people I don't know, how would what I do affect them? Listen, some of you guys said that you're going to write that book, right? You're going to start that business, and you haven't done that yet. And guess what? There's someone out there who has yet to step fully into their purpose because they're waiting on your book. They're waiting on your products and services. You see, we're all connected, okay? And then I also want you to understand, here's your next nugget, that it's not about blame or excuses. Too often we find ourselves blaming. The blame game, right? We've all been there. I've been there. Okay? It can't always be your parents' fault, your employer's fault, your teacher's fault, the economy, Trump's fault, right? We always want to blame Trump for everything, but he can't be responsible for everything, right? So we have to learn how to take responsibility for our own actions, okay? And the third one is you need to find a purpose that is greater than yourself. And that's a huge one. Find a purpose that is greater than yourself. Because when you're able to find a purpose that is greater than yourself, you'll never allow anyone or anything to get you out of character. And this is what's key. Because I know every single person in this room is in a position of influence, whether you believe it or not. Okay? And so once you start climbing to the top, once you start getting to that level of impact, influence, leadership, there will be people trying to drag you down. No matter how nice you are, that's just the name of the game, right? And so you got to protect your peace and position at all times. See, you can't react to everything. There's a difference between a reaction and a response, right? A reaction is impulsive. And that's where people get in trouble. They lose their reputation, their brands, their businesses, right? Okay? You have to be calculated. You have to think things through and think about your purpose, which should be greater than yourself. Yes? You guys with me? Mm-hmm. All right. So moving on to truth number 4. Truth number 4. Life requires your A game, but not just when you think it benefits you. So some of you guys maybe started off life like me, right? A little rocky. Right? You started off rocky, but now you're the overachiever. Raise your hand if you started off a little rocky and now you're like the overachiever. Maybe some of you guys were the overachiever and now you're kind of the procrastinator, right? Doesn't matter how you started, right? It's how you finish. That's what's important. I was, like I tell you guys, man, I was literally like a bad kid. Not bad, but I was always in trouble as a child. And something just shifted and turned for me once I got into high school and college. And so when I was in my master's program, once I started getting straight A's and becoming that student, it almost became an addiction. Like I loved being good at that point, right? And in my master's program, she's laughing, I was the overachieving student. So I was always the one that my instructors would use as an example. Oh my gosh, Dupé, your presentation looks amazing. And my friends would come at the end of my presentation, they'd be like, wow, you had all the bells and whistles, like you did a lot more that was asked of us. And I kind of started to tone it down a little bit because I started feeling comfortable every time they would say that. Why do we do that? We dim our lights to make other people feel comfortable. Have you ever done that before? Yeah. Right? And it's like, it's not up to us to lower our standards. It's up to other people to raise their standards. See, we're all born to be great, right? And so we have to be mindful of other people trying to make you feel bad for doing what's right. And I used to be that person, always feeling bad. And so the next time that you're required to bring your A game, I want you to think about other people, even if you don't think that they will be affected by your actions. Because too often we tell ourselves, nobody's watching. That isn't true. Just because they're watching doesn't mean that they're not paying attention. And I've learned this over the last few years. Random people on social media reach out to me and I'm like, how do they even know who I was? Like, you know what I mean? Like, people are always paying attention. And so you have to be mindful of that, right? And isn't character doing what's right even when no one's looking, right? So doing the right thing, you might not get the accolades or the pat on the back that you want, but just doing the right thing is what's important, all right? And so I want you guys to also, those moments that you don't feel like doing something, do it anyways. And I tell my sister this all the time. When you get up in the morning, if you tell yourself, man, that is an inclination that that's something that you need to do. If your first thought is, I don't feel like or I don't want, that's something that you need to do. And that's what always kicks my butt in gear, okay? And Tony Robbins said it best. He said, if you want to change your life, you must change your shoulds into musts. See, when we say we should do something, we never do it, right? But if it becomes a must, we get it done. You must get gas before you go home. Otherwise, your car's going to stall. You must pay your rent. Otherwise, you're going to get evicted. But we don't put that same sense of urgency towards our own goals. Why do we do that? Right? If we put our goals in those must categories, wouldn't we all be a lot more successful in our lives? Yeah, I think so. Okay? And then I want you also to understand, here's your next nugget, that people will always hold you at the standards that you set for yourself. So if you want to increase the quality of your life, you must raise your standards. But if you set low standards for yourself, don't be surprised that people hold you to a low regard, right? I used to get mad all the time when people would call me and ask me, I'm like, why is everybody else? And then I realized, because I set high standards for myself. They know I'm going to deliver, right? And I started to actually see it as a compliment rather than, oh my gosh, like everybody. No, it's the standards that I set. And now they trust me to do X, Y, and Z. Yes? You guys with me? All right, what truth are we on? Truth number? 5. Ooh, some of you guys are not paying attention. Truth number 5, okay? Life is full of advice. I know it's a lot of truths, you guys. Life is full of advice. You don't have to follow it all, but you must consider it all. How many of you guys have ever said this? I should have listened to mom and dad. I know I have, right? I had just graduated from my multiple subject teaching credentialing program, so I didn't even introduce myself, which kind of, well, I guess she introduced me, but former teacher, you guys. And I ended up getting my first job as a 2nd grade teacher. And my mom and my sister are my best friends, so I call them for everything. Called my mom, ecstatic, telling her about the new position. And you know how parents are, they're gonna ask the right questions. So I'm excited talking about the job. Her thing is, what about health insurance? That was the first thing out of her mouth. And I'm 26 years old, and I'm telling my mom, I was never sick as a child. Why am I gonna waste X amount of money on health insurance? And at this point, my parents, you know, they put me and my sister through school, so now she's like, you're on your own, you're paying your own bills, you're an adult, you're gonna do what you want. See, I didn't understand what the big deal was until it became a big deal, right? And so I want you to understand that life, whether you seek advice or whether it's unsolicited advice, this is your next nugget, there's always nuggets of truth within the advice someone gives you, if you're paying attention. Because a lot of times, like when you go to conferences, you're gonna be hearing a lot of people speak today and tomorrow, right? There's always things that you hear and you're like, ooh, I gotta implement that right away into my life, and your life changes. Sometimes you kind of put in your back pocket for later, or maybe someone else needs it, right? But then you also need to learn how to separate the person telling you the advice from the advice itself. Because we've all done this where a spouse or our parents tell us something and we're like, you know what you're talking about. And then our friends will say the exact same thing and then we take our friend's advice, right? It might be how you're hearing it, but it doesn't change the fact that it might be beneficial for your success. So we have to stop allowing our hangups to get in the way of taking great advice. Well, it was probably less than a year, you guys, that I would soon find out why my mom was so adamant about me getting health insurance. Which leads me to my next truth, you guys. Truth number 6 is life isn't easy. It's not meant to be, but there's always a way. So at this time, you guys, it's my 2nd year teaching. Okay, I taught 2nd grade for 2 years, kindergarten for 2 years. 26 years old, adversity hit me from all angles. I was diagnosed with benign tumors at the time, and I was laid off. Now, because of my symptoms, okay, I was not able to fulfill my duties anymore as a teacher. So technically, I resigned from the layoff, okay? So I kind of got the last word. But I was put on bed rest. I was put on bed rest for 2 months. And I would have friends coming and going, bringing me food, trying to keep me company, but I hit rock bottom. And I'm looking at my life like, I was the lucky one. Remember? Like, how did I even get here? And this goes back in 2007, when, if you guys can remember, back in 2007, it wasn't mandatory to have health insurance like it is today. Thank you, President Obama. So I was getting declined by every healthcare, every hospital. I couldn't have the surgery that I needed. I was dying, literally, on my bed. And I remember being so angry. And at that point, I remember thinking, like, the only person to blame at that point had to be God. You know what I mean? Like, there was no one else to blame in my eyes at that time than God, right? And I became depressed, and I just started even questioning my faith. But after maybe a month or 2 of being depressed, I realized, well, this ain't helping, I guess I do need God. So I found myself on my hands and knees, literally praying. And I never get on my hands and knees and pray, ever. And I was praying, and in that moment, I just remember thinking, I just want to live. Like, that's all I was thinking about at that time. God, please, I just want to live. I don't feel like I deserve this. If you get me through this situation, I promise you that I will live my life the way you want me to live. But more importantly, I will always trust you. And I've made that promise to him then, and I've kept that promise since. No matter what happens in my life, whatever adversity you throw at me, I'm going to trust you that there's a reason for it. And I kid you not, you guys, it was literally probably 4 or 5 days later, I get a call from a hospital. Now, my mom, at that time, was an OBGYN nurse, right? She helped deliver babies. Her surgeon called me and said, "Dupé, come up here. We're going to perform the surgery for you." And so it was December 2008. I had my surgery. 17 tumors removed that first surgery. And one of the craziest cases that doctor has ever seen. And as if that wasn't good enough for me, because I was just happy to be alive, right? A couple weeks later, I find out that the hospital covered a $90,000 medical bill. And I was blown away, me and my mom. And at that moment, I was like, okay, there is a God. And I hate that I had to get to that point for me to get there, but I needed to experience that to be like, okay, he got me. You get what I'm saying? And that was a miracle. But I know two things for certain. Had I not got on my hands and knees that day and asked God for forgiveness, I don't think the surgery would have happened when it happened. Because sometimes he needs us to know that we need him, right? And if my mom, I don't even want to start crying. If my mom is not, she's the most kind-hearted and sweetest person ever. All my friends, all my siblings' friends call her mom. And I don't think that the surgeon or the hospital would have done what they did for me had it not been for my mom, right? See, life, you guys, have a way of knocking you down when you least expect it to, right? It does. And so you have to really keep in mind, no matter what life throws at you, you must always be ready to face unforeseen challenges with a positive and strong mindset. It's crazy because today I always watch YouTube and podcasts, and I was watching a guy that got in a car accident, broke almost every bone in his body, was paralyzed, told that he would never walk again, ended up walking again, and then a couple years later ended up getting cancer. And he still bounced back and survived. And I'm thinking, oh, I thought my situation was bad, right? And he's still going. He's a speaker. He's doing so many things. And I was so inspired to say, okay, if something else hits me again, I'm going to have to get back up, right? Because even after he had, after his car accident, he was like, really, God? I learned from my first, why cancer now? But sometimes we can't, we have no choice of what cards we're dealt, pretty much, okay? And so I want you guys to understand that, you have to have hope. This is where you have to have the willpower and determination to see it through. Because I guarantee you, when you're able to see it through, you'll look back and say, that's why I had to go through what I went through, right? And I want you to understand that there's always a way, okay? You might not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there's always a way. And what I tend to do is, if something gets tough, I always look back at my past experience. I'm like, well, I made it through that, so heck, I could make it through this, right? You got to put things in perspective. And that leads me to my last truth, you guys. Truth number 7, life is what you make of it. This is a true story of a 40-year-old man, and I love this story. I read it one day when I'm a research junkie. I was just researching online, and it's always stuck with me. But this 40-year-old man was told that he had 1 year to live because he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And this man was distraught. Not only the fact, we all would be distraught if we were told we had 1 year to live, right? But he was more saddened because he was going to leave his wife with nothing because this man was broke. So this man began to strategize, and he realized, you know what? I'm going to live my last few days as a professional novelist, which was a lifelong dream of his. So his hopes was that he was going to publish some books and then leave his wife with the royalties. So this man began to write and write and write, and by the year's end, he ended up writing 5.5 books. However, this man did not die. See, his cancer went into remission, and it ended up disappearing altogether. And throughout his life, he ended up writing 70 books. So you guys are probably like, okay, that story just kind of took a turn, right? But how did that happen? Well, I truly believe that prior to cancer, this man was not living to his full potential. And it took a death sentence of cancer to actually wake him up. Now he had the determination and willpower to succeed. And guess what? The universe granted his wish. You guys, after my first surgery, I had another surgery. 22 tumors removed, 39 total. It took 2 surgeries for me to wake up. For me to realize that I was playing it safe. Yes, I was an entrepreneur, I owned my own business, but I also wanted to be a speaker, and I never pursued that. 11 days post-op from my surgery, I went to see Eric Thomas and Inky Johnson speak. And I remember sitting in the audience saying, you know what, that's going to be me next year. 2 months later, I was on the stage. I'm telling you guys this because I don't want you guys to have to wait to, you'd experience some life tragic situation or death before you realize that you are equipped with everything you have today to achieve your goals. You don't have to see the whole grand masterpiece. That's not your job. Your job is to take baby steps, right? and to start to make progress each and every day so that you can fulfill your goals. What problems are you guys holding on to that can potentially be your greatest gift? It took me a long time. I never spoke about my story. It took me a long time to realize, oh my goodness, my adversity, my problem became my greatest gift. Because once I opened up about my story, guess what? I became a motivational speaker. I became a social media influencer. I became a 4-time published author, right? I became a better writer, all because of my adversity. And so I want to encourage you guys to be courageous. I want you guys to be fearless, right? And I want you guys to really just start to think about the things that you want to achieve and just go out there and do it and be hopeful. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you, Dupé. Yes. Yeah. That is so true. Our purpose is tied to so many